and welcome to the Dr. Paula Show. I am so glad that you're here. You're joining me now or you're joining me later. This very first episode, we're going to get up close and personal. We're going to talk about when I was just a little girl up to right now today, where I'm 75 years old. And hopefully when others are watching later and it's years down the road, they'll be able to come back and find out just a little bit about me from this first episode. I'd like to start with a quote, and it's one of my favorite quotes. It talks about the way I feel about what I'm doing and what I've done my entire life. It's from George Bernard Shaw, and it goes like this. He said, "This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a true force of nature instead of a feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy." He said, "I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It's a sort of splendid torch, which I've got to hold up for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations." Close quote. And that's really, my friends, how I felt about my life, my entire life. I've always loved what I've done. If I have something that I don't enjoy doing, I stop doing it. And of course, I've had heartaches. I've had many heartaches, and yet my life has been filled with joy, partly because I choose and I make that choice. And I'm going to be talking a lot about choice, about accountability, about living a joyful life as we go through the many episodes. However, I'd like to let you know that I chose to have my show here, the Dr. Paula Show. I'm going to be answering questions, because I believe that that's the best way that I can serve women. And my overall mission is to educate, elevate, and empower 3.9 billion women, everybody on the planet. And we're doing that through the Win-Win Women Network and in other ways. So I wanted to let you know from the very beginning, how did I become a global mentor? And that's the name of this episode. So starting way back, because all of our lives, everything that happens to us in our lives, it influences, it impacts us, especially when we were young. So I was born in Southern California in the United States, in Los Angeles, and I am the daughter of an entertainer. My father's name, he's passed, long passed, but Wendell Noble. So that's my maiden name. I love that name, Noble. I was Paula Noble for many years, and then so gratefully now Paula Noble Fellingham. So Wendell Noble, he was a singer, he was an entertainer, he was a wonderful comedian, and he played instruments. His voice was so glorious, and he was a radio show host his entire life. And that's why later in my life, for one moment in time, for several years, but in a section of my life, I was a radio show host, but we'll get to that. So as a little girl, I was raised by this wonderful entertainer, very outgoing, full of confidence, extremely talented father, and a beautiful mother who was beautiful on the inside, the outside. And it was like I was raised by Mary Poppins. My mother was like, she was just cheerful. She sang, she laughed, she infused into me this beautiful love of life, and just gave me such a gift. Both of them did. Very different people, very different personalities, and yet there were 6 of us, so I have 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and I'm so blessed that I grew up in an era. So I was born in 1949. Yes, I'm 75. And so to be able to say, and yet I don't, the inside kind of stays the same, I believe, and the outside keeps going. I feel like I'm still back at age 33, and yet the outside kept going, right? And I'm so blessed to have been able to live in through the eras of watching such a change such a development in so many, many ways. I'll continue on about me and about what happened as I was younger. So watching my father perform, and then had the opportunity to do some performing in my young years. I loved going to high school. I met my sweetheart, to whom I have been married for 53 years, Dr. Gilbert Fellingham. And he was just Gil back in 7th grade, and just admired this wonderful young man. He was so, so smart. He still is very, very bright. And we are quite different. And yet we met in the 7th grade, and then we were high school sweethearts, and then in college, and I'll get to that in a minute. So in Los Angeles, and then going to this wonderful high school, and then going to Occidental College. It's a private fine arts college in LA. It's in the Pasadena Eagle Rock area, Occidental College, Oxy they call it, OXY. And I majored in music. My father was a musician. I am still a musician, and minored in physical education. So when it came time to graduate, and then I was offered a position in music, and I was offered a position in physical education. I'd done so much music, and the offer was in the heart of LA, and this offering of physical education was being a gymnastic coach and being the director of this great, big, wonderful drill team and cheerleaders. I was 22 years old. I chose that one. And so I went on to have 2 years of fabulous fun at Agora High School, Agoura, which is still in Southern California, up past the valley and in the Westlake area. And I loved teaching. I loved my students. Again, they were just a little bit younger than I was. And we had such a fun time. 76 members of the drill team. And then I had 3 gymnastic teams that are classes that fed in to my elite gymnastic class. And that was magnificent. And all those wonderful gymnasts, then they were able to go on, and many of them went on and did more and more in gymnastics in their colleges. And it was fun. And of course, all the cheerleaders, and it just had a fantastic time. Then when it was time to start our family, we didn't want to raise the children in Southern California. My husband was also teaching high school. And we went up to a place where I left a piece of my heart. We lived in Sequim, S like snake, Sequim, spells like Sequim, Washington, the state of Washington, up in the Northwest, where there's just 7 acres. We had a little mini farm. We had pigs, we had chickens, we had cows out in the back that belonged to someone else, but we had them in our place. And then about a half-acre garden. We had plum trees and apple trees, and it was just beautiful. And we then started having more children, and I started teaching them, because I'm a musician, how to play the piano. And then they started singing, and when our first 4 were daughters, when they were 3, 5, 7, and 9, we performed to our first big audience of 1,500. And that was when I realized, we could do something with this, because my husband was a school teacher in the summers. Then we started, as they got better and they got a little older and they started playing instruments, then we became the Fellingham Family Band. And we performed in 42 states. And this is, of course, years later, but I'm jumping a bit. And at the United Nations, and then in Europe. And our last summer, we did this for 12 summers. We'd leave in May and came back in September for 12 years. And we performed on 10 instruments. It was highly choreographed, singing in lots of different parts. And I choreographed some, but we had a professional choreographer. And we were able to perform and just have this wonderful experience. Our last summer, we performed 273 shows. That's 5 a day and 6 on the weekends at our own theater at Six Flags Great America in Chicago. So that was a piece of my life. And the fact that I'm not doing anything with music except just singing in my congregation's choir is always sometimes surprising to me, because for so many years, I was just intensely creating and performing with my family, music, music, music. And as they got older and older, then, you know, we added on to our show. We ended up having 30 minutes of three 30-minute shows with no duplicate numbers. So we performed a little set from the 30s, 40s, and then the 50s, 60s, but most of our show was country bluegrass. So the devil went down to Georgia and all those fun, you know, uh, dueling banjos. We just had such a fun time. And then we always ended with patriotic. And that was like a standing ovation because you sing God Bless the USA and people stand up. And so that actually segued me into being a parenting expert, because although I had been able to help many parents before that time, that was when I really started being focused on helping people strengthen their family, helping parents strengthen their families and learn how to parent in a way that really works well. And so then I wrote my first book, Solutions for Families. And I won't talk about every book, but just two of them. I've written now 8 books. And the Solutions for Families were really answers to the many questions that so many of the people in our audiences, because after our shows, what happened? I'd go into the audience, talk to the people, talk to the moms, and they'd all ask me, how did you do this? And, you know, did you make them practice? And what about the discipline? And how do you, you know, just answering their questions, mostly about how to raise children who are loving and kind, obedient, and productive. So then I wrote my first book, Solutions for Families, and loved that opportunity to create that. And then I created another book for families. I've created 4 books for families. Moving on. So then my husband had a midlife crisis when our children were 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. He decided he didn't want to teach high school anymore. And he got his PhD. He left because if you, on the Olympic Peninsula, you can't commute to Seattle. He got his PhD in Seattle and would come home on the weekends for years. And then, of course, we performed in the summers. And so then the wonderful opportunity we had to then come where he's been happily teaching in the state of Utah for 34 years. So he has a PhD in biostatistics. Again, very bright and loves what he does. And so then we continued performing and I continued writing books. And as a parenting expert, I came to the realization that I knew how to teach parents how to parent. However, so many of the reasons that parents misbehave, if you will, is because they're trying to parent like their parents, and maybe their parents didn't do everything right, you know, or the way that's effective parenting. And so then the problems were just repeated. And I knew that I didn't know how to help people stop the cycle, to create massive change in their lives and create new habits of thoughts, words, and actions. And I went back at age 50 and got my doctorate. It's a doctorate of education. So an EDD, my husband has a PhD, doctorate of science in biostatistics. And so my EDD then is in human relations. And I learned how to stop that cycle and help people create new habits with their thoughts, words, and actions. And that's the book, Believe It, Become It. So Believe It, Become It then went on to be a bestseller, and just love that book because it's helped so many people create positive change in their lives. In fact, at the back of the book, it says, read this book and change your life. I was pretty confident there, but it really has been able to do that. And I'm just thrilled that I'm able to do that. And then I started traveling quite a bit as a speaker. So after we stopped performing professionally, then I became a professional speaker. And I was flown, it was wonderful. I loved it. However, I was gone from home quite a bit. And yet all these audiences to whom I spoke, then I was able to really become more and more versed or knowledgeable in how to reach people, how to help different types of people. And then when I started traveling internationally, then I spoke to more and more people of different nationalities. Of course, I had already done that quite a bit. However, I forgot to tell you, back in there during the performing years, when the children were in school, then I went to the radio station and I had a 2 hour a day, 5 day a week radio show, no call-ins, me just teaching parenting and relationships and marriage, how to strengthen marriages. So that was a wonderful opportunity to do that. And then actually physically going out to the world. One of the things that I need to share with you, want to share with you, that was a huge failure in my life. I got the idea that I would like to have my own tour around the United States, and I set up 32 cities where I would be on the platform 1 to 3:30 and 7 to 9:30, so twice a day, 4 days a week, and then I'd travel to the next city and get ready and do it again. And that was 2007, 2008. Well, in America, in 2007, 2008, there was a recession. And so I had booked myself, though, in 32 cities, in many hotels all over the nation, 32 cities in America. And it was pretty much a financial disaster because I didn't anticipate there would be a recession and people were not buying. I had four $5,000 products, and they were how to become a highly paid speaker and trainer, how to eliminate debt, how to write a book in 90 days or less, and how to communicate. It was all about communication and negotiation. And and they were $5,000. And I had a big team of women. I was doing very well financially up to that point. And then as I went from city to city to city to city, I had huge overhead because I had full page ads. I had radio spots going in that city's radio stations. And it was huge overhead, about $100,000 a week overhead. And after 8 months of being on the road, I came back only 300,000 in debt, but 300,000 in debt. And I had to sell our beautiful home, sold another lot, and built another home, much smaller home. In fact, part of my adventure is that I built 3 homes: a stick home, a steel home, and now the home we're living in now is a cement home. And that's a conversation for another time if your question wants to be, tell us about building homes. Anyway, my sweet friends, just moving on with the story. And so I came back from that, tour of the United States. That was 9 months. And all the women who had worked for me, all but one, was, I had found them other jobs because I really needed to have them do that. And I had one gal. And in every single one of those seminars, every single one, then I had gotten the contact information for all the attendees, and I had sent it back to her, and it was snail mail, right? I mean, this is a long time ago, and the internet hadn't developed like it has now. 2007, 2008, and I sent back, and she put it into Autopilot Riches. This is an old software. I don't even think it exists anymore. Anyway, she put in everyone's contact information. Well, about 3 weeks before I came home, and I said, Michelle, not remembering about this, I said, Michelle, we need to get rid of everything that's dinging us automatically every month. And she obediently did. Well, about 3 days later, in my inexpensive hotel room, in the middle of the night, I sat up in bed and I realized, oh my gosh. I even contacted her right in the middle of the night and said, did you get rid of Autopilot Riches? And she said, yes, you told me to get rid of everything we were paying for monthly. All the data from all the women and all these seminars for all those months was gone, except for the ones who had purchased our product. We still had them. This was a huge blow. And so to have come back hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and to not have all the data from all the women and all those months and being away from my family, of course, I had come back for the major holidays, that it was very hard. It was very difficult for me. and all the things that I had been teaching on the road, right, then came back to me. And, are you going to be as strong as you should be at this point in your life? And yet it took me a while to get back to be as cheerful as I was before. It was a big blow. And then so when I came back, I knew, excuse me, I knew that I needed to start something brand new, fresh. And I did. It was called the Women's Information Network. And it was a wonderful, we had thought leaders teaching and all. And that, I grew that for about 10, 11 years and had wonderful experiences, mostly the experiences of going with my team, sometimes with my team and sometimes alone, but we put on events all over the world, and some virtual and many, many, many in person. And on one of the future episodes of the Dr. Paula Show, I will teach you how you can put on an event in any country, connecting and collaborating with other people. And that worked very well for me. So in 2019, then I came to the end of knowing that that needed to be the end of that, because that entity, and I sold it, and not for very much, because it was really 2020. It was actually the start of the pandemic and COVID, and I just released that from my life. And then I was able to really, I'm a Christian. I honor everyone's beliefs, and yet I do believe in prayer. And I went to my God and I prayed, and into my heart, never lights or words, but into my heart just came a knowing that I was to, it wasn't about Paula Fellingham. It was about finding beautiful experts and creating something so that any woman in any country at any time of the day or night can access an expert in their language on any subject for free. And that, my friends, is Win-Win Women, the Win-Win Women Network, which is now the #1 interactive global women's network. And we are thrilled, and it's growing, and we have other programs that are exciting that I'll tell you about in other episodes. And I have learned so much from the women of the world, the people of the world, starting businesses, growing businesses. And I see that I'm almost out of time, but I do want to tell about the nonprofit. I've had a nonprofit from 2016 when I hosted the World Parliament on Spirituality. And we had people from 72 nations represented, and it was a 4-day wonderful conference. And that was when I launched the Global Prosperity and Peace Initiative. You could go to Prosperity and Peace, and we have 3 huge big programs. One is the International Youth Parliament, led now by Jackie Zokoli, a dear friend of mine. The other is our project in Uganda. You could read about that on prosperityandpeace.org. And then our beautiful Women's Global Alliance.org. I invite you to look at that. A beautiful, beautiful initiative that is helping with the Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 of them in 195 nations. The Women's Global Alliance.org. And I will close with a wonderful quote. I always want to start with a quote and end with a quote on the Dr. Paula Show. And I do invite you, ask me any question, anytime. I've got you. I've got your back. I love being available for this opportunity to answer women's questions on pretty much anything, because I have been a parenting expert, and then I, of course, a business expert, and then health and fitness. I have courses on weight loss and health and fitness, and really being able to help women with total life excellence, not perfection, just enjoying a level of excellence in every area of their lives. So I know that I can help you. And I am thrilled to be the CEO of the Win-Win Women Network and the director of the Women's Global Alliance, this beautiful nonprofit project. And I invite you to ask me any questions anytime on any topic. You just go to Paula at paulafellingham.com. Just ask your question there, paula@paulafellingham.com. That's the email you could send your question to. And I'd like to close with a quote. And this is from Mother Teresa. I have many heroes. Two of my greatest heroes are Eleanor Roosevelt, who is the wife of an American president many years ago. Franklin D. Roosevelt was her husband's name. He was president. She had 11 children. She wrote 11 books. She did magnificent things. And then Mother Teresa, this little 4'11" wonderful saint now. The Catholic Church made her a saint, and she worked in Calcutta, India. I've been to India 7 times and do a great work there. There are 600 million women in India. And so how could I not do a work in India, since my goal and mission truly is to strengthen women and families worldwide. So this was written by Mother Teresa. No, it wasn't written. The quote was written by Mother Teresa. And then I think I will have time to go ahead and end with one more thing, the thing that she read every day. So she said, the quote, "Spread love wherever you go. First of all, in your own home. Give love to your husband, your wife, your children, your next door neighbor. Let no one ever come to you without leaving better and happier." Then she said, "Be the living expression of God's kindness, kindness in your face, kindness in your smile, kindness in your warm greeting," close quote. And this is what she read every day. It was written by Kent Keith, and it's on page 22 of my book, Believe It, Become It. If you ever want to get that book, my books, some of them are on Amazon. All right, so here it goes. People are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're honest, people may cheat you. Be honest anyway. If you find happiness, people may be jealous. Be happy anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give your best anyway. For you see, in the end, it's between you and God. It never was between you and them anyway. Thank you so much for joining me. And now I'm going to stop our recording, and then I'll take your questions.